Louis Pasteur was born in a quiet little town in eastern France in the year 1822. The streets were simple, the air smelled of earth and leather, and life moved slowly, the kind of place where every sunrise looked the same. It carried the quiet sense of hope. His father was a tanner, a man of rough hands and a gentle heart, who believed in hard work, discipline, and honesty above all things. In that modest home, surrounded by the rhythm of labor and the smell of hides, young Louis learned his first and most lasting lesson, that true greatness begins with humility. As a child, Louis wasn't the type to draw attention. He wasn't the quickest in the classroom, not the loudest in conversation. Teachers called him slow, sometimes even average. But what they couldn't see was that he was watching quietly, curiously, and deeply, while others raced ahead. Louis took his time, looking closer, thinking longer, and noticing what others missed. He had the patience of someone who understood. Even then, that knowledge doesn't shout, it whispers. He would later say, in the fields of observation, chance favors only the prepared mind. It has a sentence that would come to define not only his work, but his life. Even as a young boy, he somehow knew that success never arrives by accident. It is something you must prepare for, patiently, silently, and with love. He trained his eyes to see beyond the surface, and his heart to understand what books could not teach, that truth reveals itself only to those who are ready to find it. Louis was not born a prodigy. He didn't possess instant brilliance. His mind was not filled with miracles waiting to unfold. It was filled with questions, stubborn, burning questions that he refused to let go of. Every answer he ever found began with curiosity, and every discovery began with a long stretch of effort, struggle, and faith. He was the kind of soul who believed that the process mattered just as much as the result. When teachers overlooked him, he didn't complain. He studied harder. When classmates laughed at his slow progress, he kept his head down and worked in silence. When people doubted his abilities, he didn't try to prove them wrong. He simply went on building his knowledge, layer by layer, like a craftsman shaping something invisible. He once said, "Let me tell you the secret that has led me to my goal. My strength lies solely in my tenacity." That single word, tenacity, became the heartbeat of his entire existence. It was his quiet strength, the unseen force behind every success he would one day achieve. Tenacity meant waking up before dawn and going to bed after midnight. It meant failing, not once or twice, but 100 times, and still believing the next experiment might hold the answer. Louis Pasteur's early life wasn't marked by extraordinary talent, it was marked by extraordinary perseverance. He was living proof that genius is not a gift you are born with, but a discipline you build. The lessons he learned as a boy, the patience of observation, the dignity of hard work, and the courage to keep going when no one believes in you, would guide him through every discovery of his future. In the quiet corners of his childhood, among books, experiments, and long moments of reflection, Louis Pasteur was unknowingly preparing himself for a destiny that would one day change the world. His brilliance was not lightning striking from the sky. It was a slow, steady flame, built on faith, humility, and the relentless will to never stop trying. And as history would later show, that small flame would light up the darkest corners of science, proving forever that true genius lives not in speed or talent, but in patience and persistence. Louis Pasteur's true journey into science began with a single, innocent question: why do things change? Why does fresh milk, sweet and white in the morning, turn sour by nightfall? Why does wine, once alive with flavor, suddenly spoil. What mysterious hand governs the growth of life and what causes its decay? In the middle of anything else, people didn't have an answer. Most believed that life simply appeared out of nowhere, that mold, rot, and disease were born from the air itself. The idea of an invisible world, too small to see yet powerful enough to move everything, was almost unthinkable. But Pasteur, with his quiet persistence and deep curiosity, refused to accept that explanation. He could not believe that nature worked through chaos. He sensed a hidden order, something delicate and unseen guiding every change in the world around him. He would later write, "The role of the infinitely small in nature is infinitely great." To him, that wasn't just a line, it was a revelation. Pasteur believed that the smallest forces, the tiniest living forms, might hold the keys to health, disease, and even life itself. He saw meaning in the invisible, faith in the microscopic, and this belief would reshape the foundation of science forever. So he began to work. His laboratory was modest glass flasks, tubes, and the faint smell of alcohol and smoke. Hours slipped into nights, and nights bled into mornings. He would watch, measure, boil, and wait. Sometimes he would fall asleep beside his desk, his face resting on the cool wooden table, dreaming about unseen worlds dancing under his microscope. There were days when his experiments failed miserably, when nothing seemed to make sense, when exhaustion blurred his vision, yet each failure only strengthened his resolve. He often told his students, "Fortune favors the prepared mind." He believed that discovery was not an act of luck, but the result of endless preparation, of training the mind to recognize meaning where others saw only accidents. When something went wrong, he didn't take curse fate. He cleaned his instruments, took a breath, and began again. For years he tested his theories, boiling liquids, sealing containers, comparing what grew and what stayed pure. He studied wine, milk, and even beer, searching for the common thread behind spoilage and decay. The world around him doubted. Many mocked him, saying he was chasing ghosts, but Pasteur had seen enough through his lens to know he was right. He saw tiny shapes, living forms moving in the drops of liquid, invisible to the naked eye but alive beyond question. And then, after countless nights of patience and persistence, the pattern revealed itself. The cause was not magic, no mystery, nor spontaneous birth. It was life, microscopic life, minute organisms, so small that millions could fit on the tip of a needle, were the true agents of fermentation and disease. The invisible world had spoken, and Pasteur had finally understood its language. It was a discovery that shattered centuries of belief. For the first time, humanity realized that sickness did not rise from bad air or divine punishment. It came from living agents, capable of spreading, growing, and being defeated. Pasteur's insight opened the door to hygiene, sterilization, vaccines, and the entire science of microbiology. His experiments turned science into salvation. From that moment, he wasn't just studying life, he was protecting it. The invisible world that once caused fear became, under his hands, a field of hope, proof that understanding, not superstition, could guard humanity against suffering. And as he looked through his microscope, tired but triumphant, Pasteur must have felt a quiet joy. He had followed one simple question into the deepest secrets of existence, and in doing so, had changed the destiny of humankind forever. Not everyone believed him. In fact, many mocked him. In those days, the idea that something invisible, something you couldn't touch, see, or smell, could cause disease was simply unimaginable. The world was built on certainty, on tradition, On pride, doctors and scientists trusted what they could see with their eyes, not what they might glimpse through a lens. The thought that a drop of water could hold entire worlds of living creatures sounded almost like madness. Louis Pasteur stood against that disbelief, quietly but firmly. He wasn't a man who fought with anger or shouted in frustration. He fought with patience. He fought with evidence, and most of all, he fought with humility. He once said, "Do not let yourself be tainted with barren skepticism." To him, skepticism wasn't evil, but empty skepticism, the kind that refuses to see even when the truth stands before it, was deadly. He believed that blind doubt could destroy as much as blind faith. One closes the eyes in devotion, the other in arrogance, and both lead to ignorance. Pasteur's work demanded more than intelligence. It demanded courage, courage to challenge centuries of belief, courage to stand alone in a room full of powerful men, and courage to trust what his microscope revealed when everyone else looked away, when his peers ridiculed him, when newspapers mocked him, when academic halls whispered that he was a dreamer chasing millions. Pasteur didn't argue. He didn't retaliate. He simply went back to his laboratory, tightened his apron, adjusted his instruments, and continued. When people ridiculed him, he answered with his work. One of his students would later say, and it was true, he understood that truth does not need to shout. It only needs time to be seen. While others debated, Pasteur observed. While they doubted, he proved. He would fill flasks with liquid, seal some, leave others open, and wait. Weeks later, the sealed ones stayed pure, untouched by life, while the open ones teemed with growth. It was simple, elegant, and undeniable. He let his results speak louder than pride. When others shouted, he stayed silent, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. He believed that science was not about victory, but about clarity, not about ego, but about enlightenment. To his students, he gave one of the most powerful lessons in scientific history. Do not put forward anything that you cannot prove by experiment. That was his rule, his compass, his unbreakable principle, and under that rule, he built not just discoveries, but a legacy. Slowly, quietly, the world began to listen. The same doctors who once left now began to wonder. Hospitals that once rejected his methods started sterilizing their instruments. Surgeons who ignored cleanliness began washing their hands, and lives that would have been lost were suddenly saved. The world didn't change overnight, but with every experiment, every drop of culture under his microscope, Pasteur was pushing humanity forward out of the darkness of ignorance and into the light of reason. He proved that truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. It only needs persistence, patience, and faith in the power of understanding. And as he watched the world slowly awaken to what he had seen long ago, Pasteur didn't boast. He simply kept working, calm, steady, humble, because he knew that the real victory wasn't fame, the real victory was progress. Louis Pasteur's faith was not loud, not showy, not built on words shouted from a pulpit. It was quiet. It lived inside him like a steady flame. He never separated his science from his soul. He was said, "A little science distances you from God, but much science brings you back to Him." To Pasteur, those words were not a contradiction. They were a revelation. He believed that when you first begin to study the world, you might feel powerful, even proud. You might think that human reason explains everything, that we control the mysteries of nature. But the deeper you go, the more you discover. The more you learn, the more you realize how vast creation truly is. You begin to see design in every detail, wonder in every atom, harmony in every law. And that is where faith quietly returns. For Pasteur, God was not somewhere far above the stars. God was in the smallest things, in a single drop of water, in the pattern of a snowflake, in the life hidden within a cell. He saw the head of creation not in the impossible miracles of legend, but in the living miracle of nature itself. Every discovery he made, every experiment he conducted, only deepened his respect for the divine order of the world. Science, he believed, was not the enemy of God, it was the language through which God's work could be understood. The more he explored, the more he felt that science and faith were not two roads diverging apart, but two paths that met at the same horizon of truth. But faith, for Pasteur, was not only spiritual, it was moral. He believed that a scientist as hard must be as pure as his instruments. He was said, "It is surer to be cheated than to cheat." To him, integrity was not optional, it was the foundation of discovery. A scientist could fail in his experiment, but he must never fail in his honesty. In a world beginning to chase power, recognition, and profit, Pasteur stood as a reminder that true science is not born from greed, but from service. He often told his students that knowledge is a sacred trust, that to learn the secrets of life is to take on a responsibility to protect it. He believed that the purpose of science was not to dominate nature, but to serve it, not to exploit life, but to preserve it. He knew that every breakthrough must serve humanity, not the ego of the discoverer, but the safety and progress of the people who would live after him. Pasteur once wrote, "There are no such things as applied sciences, there are only applications of science." By this, he meant that science itself is pure, a river of knowledge. How we use it determines its worth. A discovery can heal, or it can harm. The moral direction always lies in the hands of those who wield it. Every one of his achievements, from the vaccines that saved lives to the process of pasteurization that made food safe, came not from ambition, but from compassion. He looked at the world and saw suffering he could reduce, dangers he could remove, and lives he could save. That was his purpose, his prayer, his legacy. In his later years, when his hands trembled and his body weakened, his faith only grew stronger. He no longer sought fame or honor, only the quiet joy of knowing that his work had made life a little safer, a little kinder, and a little more hopeful for generations to come. Through all his experiments, through every sleepless night in his laboratory, Louis Pasteur proved something greater than any single discovery: that science, when guided by integrity and love, is one of the purest acts of faith a human being can offer. Despite all his brilliance, Louis Pasteur never saw himself as someone great. He never wore his genius like a crown. Instead, he carried it like a responsibility. He was humble, soft-spoken, and deeply compassionate, a man whose greatness lasted not in pride, but in purpose. Those who met him often described the calm presence, a warmth in his voice, a kindness in his eyes. Pasteur never looked down on anyone, not even the simplest of workers in his lab. He believed that every person, no matter how small their role, had something to teach and something to give. He often spoke of children with particular tenderness. "When I approach a child," he said, "he inspires in me two sentiments: tenderness for what he is, and respect for what he may become." That line carried the weight of his entire philosophy, that the future was born in the hands of the young, and that every mind, no matter how quiet or uncertain, contained the potential to change the world. To Pasteur, curiosity was sacred. It wasn't just a trait, it was a light, a divine spark placed in every human being. He believed that wonder was the beginning of wisdom, that the act of questioning was the first breath of discovery. To know how to wonder and question, he said, is the first step of the man toward discovery. He often encouraged his students not just to memorize, but to imagine, not to accept what was written, but to test it. He wanted them to look at the world with the eyes of a child, eyes that still saw mystery instead of routine. For him, every unanswered question was a doorway to truth. But above all, Pasteur valued work. He believed that real happiness did not come from fame, wealth, or recognition. It came from effort, from doing something with all one's heart. One must work. One must work. He often repeated, that is happiness. The supreme happiness on earth, work. To Pasteur, was not a burden, it was a form of prayer. Every experiment he conducted was an offering, a small act of devotion toward humanity. He didn't teach his discoveries to build his name, he worked to build hope. When he stood in his laboratory, surrounded by the faint light of his lamps and the quiet hum of glass instruments, he wasn't thinking of himself, he was thinking of the farmers who lost their cattle, the mothers who lost their children, the people who suffer from diseases that no one could explain. To him, science was not just knowledge, it was compassion in action. Every drop of sweat, every sleepless night, every repeated trial, all of it came from love. He believed that the best way to serve God and man was through dedication, honesty, and tireless work. He used to tell his assistants that work purifies the soul. When your hands are busy, he said, your heart stays clean. He saw effort as the bridge between what we dream and what we become. Pasteur's own life was proof of that. He worked even when ill, even when his body began to fail him. His passion was stronger than his pain. He kept moving forward, not for glory, but because he believed that every hour spent in pursuit of truth was an hour spent in service of humanity. And in the quiet moments of his later years, when he looked back on his journey, the struggles, the discoveries, the sleepless nights, he must have felt a deep peace, because his life had been exactly what he hoped it would be, a life of purpose, a life of compassion, a life where work was love made visible. That was Louis Pasteur's greatest lesson to the world, that real greatness does not come from power or titles, but from humility, curiosity, and the courage to keep working for the good of others. In his later years, Pasteur grew frail, but his mind never dimmed. He once said, I am on the edge of mysteries, and the veil is getting thinner and thinner. Even as his health faded, he remained curious, still reading, still questioning, still believing that truth was worth chasing. He warned future generations not to mistake belief for reality. The greatest derangement of the mind is to believe in something because one wishes it to be so. For him, truth was sacred and must always come before comfort. He looked back on his life not with pride, but with gratitude. Posterity will one day laugh at the foolishness of modern materialistic philosophers, he said. The more I study nature, the more I stand amazed at the work of the Creator. And before he left this world, he whispered a hope that still echoes today. When I die, I hope to have done enough to be remembered not as a great man, but as a good man who served humanity. That was his legacy, not just his discoveries, but his humility, his faith, and his eternal curiosity. He taught the world that science is not cold or distant, it is full of love, wonder, and the desire to protect life. He reminded us that greatness is not found in titles or fame, but in service. And so, as we remember Louis Pasteur, we remember a man who proved that one person's curiosity can heal millions, that one mind can light the path for generations to come. He left us with this final truth: do not forget that you are dealing with the most powerful force of nature, life itself. Louis Pasteur's words still whisper to every scientist, every dreamer, every curious soul, telling us to stay humble, stay curious, and never stop learning, because as long as curiosity lives, the light of discovery will never die.